We're just giving everyone a couple of minutes to join us and then we're going to get started. So very excited to have you all here today. But we'll just give everyone a couple more minutes. We all know what technology is like when you're running around trying to meet a deadline. Wonderful. Let's get started. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. Well, thank you for joining us. No doubt you're all feeling the pressure of end of year and now planning for a fantastic 2023, or should I say 2022. I've been so immersed in planning for next year, I already think it's next year. Look, it's been a challenging couple of years, and I think it's great to finish off the year with a really exciting live case study, which is what we've got for you today. Managing a contingent workforce comes with a huge amount of complexity, and today's webinar is all about helping you make informed decisions on how you manage this complexity. As I promised, we've got a live case study. There's nothing better for learning than these kind of moments. So we're very fortunate to be hearing firsthand from Tabcorp on how they've managed to manage this complexity with their partners Hudson RPO and Beeline. The project we're discussing today actually kicked off during COVID, which was, as we know, a very stressful time for us all. As a result, the teams needed to undergo a fully remote implementation, and yet, funnily enough, the key players are not only still talking, but they're also here today on our virtual stage to share their learnings with us. So let's find out who this amazing team is. And I'm going to ask each of the Wonder team to introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Carol John, who's the Strategic Client Relationship Manager at Beeline.
Hi. I'm Carol. I'm the Strategic Client Relationship Manager at Beeline, and I was the Beeline project sponsor for this project.
Fantastic. And Jenny Mowat, General Manager of Capability in Tabcorp.
Thank you, Tanya. Look, capability in Tabcorp looks after everything from talent acquisition, onboarding, learning, succession planning, talent management. So it's that entire gambit. That's what our responsibility is for both employees and contractors. So hence this is right in our sweet spot.
And that's a huge remit, Jenny. So I'm looking forward to how this project has helped you manage all that. And Kimberly Hubble, the CEO of APAC of Hudson RPO, do you mind introducing yourself to today's team?
Yeah, thank you, Tanya, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Kimberly Hubble. I'm the CEO and founder of Hudson RPO in Asia Pacific, and we provide RPO and MSP solutions to clients worldwide.
Fantastic. And I'm going to be asking you that question, what is an MSP, in case anyone on the line today isn't sure. My name's Tanya Siri. I'm the founder of The Faculty, which is a company that specialises in procurement and capability development. We're 20 years old this year in Australia. I'm also the founder of The Source, which is a recruitment company for procurement, and the founder of Procurious, which is the world's largest online platform for the profession. So we've got about 40,000 members globally on Procurious. So let's just say procurement, if it's about procurement, I love talking about it. So I've been very lucky to be invited today to be your moderator. So into preparation for today's discussion, it really seemed to me like this is a partnership that we should be shouting about. And as a bit of a spoiler alert, sorry, team, I do have to share some of the highlights of what really this group of people have achieved. So Tabcorp had direct relationships with over 50 third-party contingent labour suppliers. Jenny, I can't wait to hear about that. That's a lot of suppliers, 24 of which have now been transitioned to Hudson RPO. They had a centralisation of all contingent workforce recruitment, payrolling and management via the on-site MSP team, Hudson RPO, and the vendor management system. capabilities of Beeline extended workforce platform. So don't worry, we're going to learn about all these terms and what happened today. So savings from more favourable contractual terms in supplier agreements. So for example, the reduced margins and tenure discounts resulted in, I think, more than 384,000 Australian dollars in the first 6 months. So that's just a bit of a spoiler alert of some of the outcomes of what you're going to learn today. And I think if you're in this position in your own company, you're certainly in the right place. But look, all great case studies start with a bit of scene setting. So let's get straight into it and really understand where this all started. You know, what problems were Tabcorp seeking to solve when they engaged Beeline and Hudson? So Jenny, if we can kick off with you, you know, what were your pain points? What was the business context and the problem you're trying to solve?
Look, I think you probably identified the first pain point, which was the large numbers of agencies that we had. But that was more, the biggest problem was the fact that we didn't have a central control of our contractor recruitment, and we didn't have centralised knowledge of what that was costing us, how that was operating, and that kind of led to a lack of cost management. So we didn't really know what the individuals, contractors or the agency agreements were, because they were all decentralised and managed decentrally in a decentralised way. We also didn't know how long our contractors had been with us, and so the opportunity to convert some contractors to perm employment, but also the fact that we had some very long-term contractors in very key roles was something that we wanted to understand and potentially address moving forward.
And yes, sorry, it sounds like a very similar situation for a lot of the community I work with, Jenny. So yeah, please keep going.
Look, I think the decentralisation nature of it was what we were really wanting to make sure that we covered. We wanted to make sure that there was a consistent engagement activity. We wanted to ensure that there was a consistent approach with the agencies, but also with our contractors. And then the obvious financial outcome was we wanted to be able to push a button and get one answer that sells us what we were spending it on. Yeah.
No, visibility is undoubtedly one of the big challenges for managing any category. And unfortunately for procurement professionals, it goes right across every category. So we certainly feel your pain. Now, when we kicked off, I said we'll really provide some definitions and understanding if any of you today are unsure of some of these terms we're using. So let's start with MSP. Kimberly, I think you're probably the best person to share with the team why, you know, what is an MSP?
Sure. MSP stands for Managed Service Program. And an MSP refers to the centralised management of your contingent workforce. Now, what I mean by contingent workforce, it could mean your PAYG temps, your independent contractors, or even consultants that you're using across your business. And the MSP will manage that end-to-end program from sourcing and screening and selection of those contingent personnel right through to their onboarding, payment, redeployment, conversion to permanent, and at some point offboarding. And we do that using a VMS, which stands for Vendor Management System, in this case, Beeline. Benefits that our clients typically report, as Jenny has already mentioned, is certainly better visibility and control over your contingent workforce, both cost savings and cost avoidance, risk management, particularly around co-employment risks, contractual simplicity, having one contract with the MSP rather than 50 with all of your agency panel, and certainly a better experience for your contractors, your hiring managers, and your agency panel. So that's what an MSP is. And I think Carol's going to...
Fantastic. It seems like that in itself would take care of a lot of headaches for a lot of our listeners. But Carol, yeah, what is a VMS then?
In the most simple terms, a vendor management system underpins and enables your contingent workforce program. So all of the things that Kimberly's just described for us, the technology that enables that is called a vendor management system. So a VMS gives you real transparency across your contingent workforce, everything from procurement right through to invoicing. And the Beeline Extended Workforce platform uses embedded situational analytics to enable your hiring managers to make data-driven decisions at really critical points throughout the talent process. Configuration, Beeline automates your organisation's compliance to critical HR policies and also to your programme objectives. And we ensure through analytics that your organisation is always getting brilliant value for money, the best value for money that you can get, whilst ensuring that you can still access the best talent. From procurement of contingent workers, as Kimberly said, through high volume labour hire, all the way through services procurement statement of work talent, to consolidating invoicing, providing real-time reporting and analytics, Beeline provides essentially transparency, compliance, efficiency, and as Kimberly outlined, cost control, cost avoidance, and cost savings.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully that solves a few definitions for everyone, but also spells out a lot of great benefits that if you're managing this category, I can imagine solves a lot of headaches. But speaking of headaches, I mean, it's always hard to actually choose which supplier you're going to work with in this space. I was talking to someone out of London just earlier this week. There are now 4,000 e-procurement technology providers in the world. I mean, I didn't realise we had that many people to actually use that many different pieces of technology. But there you go. So that's just in the technology space. And if we look at MSPs and VMSs, you know, it's a very crowded marketplace. And I guess what I'm interested in is how did you choose to implement Beeline and Hudson RPO, and what process did you follow to make that decision?
Look, I think the good thing was that we used a combination of our procurement team and myself from the P&C teams. So we had a kind of the two partners internally, one that was probably a bit focused on the system support side of things, and the other that was focused on the functionality and the outcome. So it was a nice partnership internally. I have to say, I think we both learnt a lot along the way. I don't think we knew, certainly didn't know about the 4,000 e-procurement options, and we certainly were probably unaware of, you know, really the vastness of the opportunities in the VMS options. And so, you know, we started off with a fairly limited tender process, really to help us streamline. But as we received submissions, we were receiving more information about what the different providers could give to us, and so probably helped us along the way to build out our business case a bit more. And so it was really helpful to learn all these acronyms as they went along. There was sort of RPOs, MSPs, VMSs. It was a nice sort of education process for all of us. And then you throw in sort of, Hudson RPO, which was HRPO at the end of it. You know, it became an education for all of us. But it's been very easy to translate. The thing that was really important for us, not that we, as I said, we ended up, we started this way, but was the partnership that Hudson RPO and Beeline brought to the table. They did that right from the get-go, and so being able to see that partnership, both in the people that were presenting it, the corporations they represented, but also in the offer that was being put to us, kind of created a really rounded, cohesive, complete offer for us. So that's probably the process that we went through, Tanya.
Well, you shouldn't apologise about having a curated list for your RFP to go out to, because it's quality, not quantity at the end of the day. And, you don't want to be sifting through 4,000 proposals either. But, I mean, I guess when you got their response, what made the Hudson Beeline partnership stand out, and why were they selected?
The probably the most outstanding thing was and the cohesion and the end-to-end offer. So we felt like we were going to receive not just a managed service program, which is probably what we initially thought we were going to aim for, but one that helped with the VMS resolve a lot of our process activities. So that helped streamline all our business processes, helped give us all of the systems reporting that was going to make life a whole lot easier. And that came, as I said, right from the beginning. So the business offering was compelling. It was financially compelling, both from both organisations. And quite frankly, they were really easy to work with. They still are. There was never, any sort of tension in that presentation or in the implementation or now. It is quite seamless when we are dealing with them, which I think is really important. When you do have partnerships come to the table, you really do need to be able to make sure that everybody's got each other's back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it certainly seems like you have got the dream team. I was fortunate enough to interview Beeline's CPO last week, and he was talking about in a previous life putting the business case forward, because all our community is always concerned about, how do you get support for these big implementations? How do you get the cash basically from the C-level? And he talked about, how he actually had a change of thought and thought, I'm going to go to the head of audit and talk about the kind of risks we have in contingent labour as a basis for the business case. And, his project got approved almost immediately, which was kind of like a dream sequence, I think, for most of our community, that you finally get that approval. So I guess this is a long way of me asking you, Jenny, how important for success was the executive buy-in, and how did that work for you at Tabcorp?
Look, I think like any investment project, it's critical to get the executive buy-in. We probably did a more traditional route. We did go through the CFO, but it was helpful that procurement rolled up to the CFO, so it felt like it was in his camp. So I think the case was always compelling for us from a financial cost reduction, but also control. So I didn't think of audit, but the improved control that we now have over the contractors within our business, the ability to understand who they are and what they're working on, how long they've been with us, and that was quite frankly, I would like to say I put a whole lot of activity into it, but it was the easiest sell because it really sold itself. The key leadership were most interested in the financial benefits, as you would expect. But as we worked down the organisation, the operational leaders were most interested in the business efficiencies that they were going to get, because whilst they had some flexibility in choosing an agency, they had additional complexity in trying to bring those people on, do that themselves throughout sort of HRM. So there was a lot of business process efficiencies which we were going to give back to them. So for me, as we got through it, that message was probably the most compelling for people.
Absolutely. And that's the challenge when you're trying to roll out or get approval for these processes. It's a different story really for each stakeholder, isn't it? You know, what's in it for them. And I think that's part of the challenge and also the opportunity. Look, I really want to bring Carol and Kimberly back into this conversation. And why don't we start talking about implementation? Because Jenny's just done a great job sort of explaining, you know, the selection process and the approval process. But of course, nothing gets delivered unless these systems and processes are implemented properly. The whole ROI of the business case is dependent on it. So, Carol, why don't we start with you? In your view, what makes a successful implementation process?
Thanks, Tanya. So, you know, I don't want to say this facetiously, but I do want to say choose the right partners that are going to guide and support you and nurture you through implementation, stabilization, and into steady state, because you, as the person who is delivering the ROI, makes your life much, much easier. We touched then on sponsorship at executive level, not just in terms of approving the business case, but also in the governance of the project. I think it's really important to keep everybody appraised of where we're up to and any challenges, celebrating any wins. Robust readiness assessment so that all your policies, your HR policies and other business policies can be clarified, updated and harmonised before you embed them into the technology. I think that's a really key, because it means that once you go live, you get better adoption, and people don't like change, but they embrace change better if everything's already discussed and reviewed and harmonised before it goes into the tool. And sort of lastly, I think a really well socialised RACI, so that every stakeholder in the project understands where they contribute, and you know that's all wrapped up in really solid project management methodologies. But it really frees up the business leaders to focus on the requirements. So what do you need as a business? And let the project and the program teams bring their expertise and deliver the solution for you. So those are really my top tips. And the only other one is, you know, don't forget to celebrate the wins.
We always forget to, don't we? Like, whew, and then it's like, what's next? It's so important. Kimberly, your thoughts, you know, what makes a successful implementation?
Yeah, I kind of talk about the 5 C's. So the first C is about having a clear case for change. And I think Jenny and her team did a really great job of defining the business case and sharing that with Beeline and us so that we all understood it. The second thing is really strong collaboration. So between Tabcorp, Beeline and Hudson RPO. And yes, there was governance surely around that by our project managers, but it was the spirit of collaboration and the shared values that I think really made a big difference. Thirdly, client understanding. Again, I think Jenny and her team did a really superb job of positioning this internally and really explaining to the stakeholders what are those benefits they're going to see, which just makes that change management process so much easier. Fourthly, communication constantly. Right throughout the project, right throughout go live, as Carol's pointed out, you know, the team that worked on this together were superb in their communication. We were daily talking with each other, and you can't communicate enough when you're doing a change of this magnitude.
Yeah.
The 5th C is around the calibre of the team. So at the end of the day, we do all of these changes and put all this technology, but a team that we embed inside Tabcorp actually has to make it work. And we were very fortunate to get a very high caliber team who are not just have the right skills, but have the right cultural match to Tabcorp, which means they've really been adopted by the Tabcorp business really seamlessly. So they're my 5 C's for a successful
I love it. I think we better publish those. Have you put those in a little blog or something, Kimberly?
Sure will.
The 5 C's. And I think I love the fact that you mentioned culture, because a lot of people think, oh, this is a technology rollout. No, it's actually a cultural change program, because you're actually having to change the way people do their jobs. Ideally, if you've improved the process and have the technology to match it. So, Jenny, how did you deliver the change management? Because you were driving it from the inside, weren't you? You poor thing.
Yeah, well, and I'd like to say up front, driving it with particularly the team from Hudson RPO, because we didn't do that on our own. We had all of the support of the Beeline team, the Hudson RPO team, and their experience. So it wasn't just about sort of the artifacts or the intent. It was sort of what had worked in their worlds, in their experiences previously, which I think was helpful. But look, we had a focus, as I indicated earlier, on our executive leadership team. We kept them connected and communicated with on a regular basis. But we probably honed very quickly onto what we called our people leaders. So there's about 600 of them around the organisation, and they literally are the people who are making the decisions about employing contractors and undertaking the work to engage them. So we involve them in the design of some of the business processes. We involve them in the design of some of the in the decisions that we were having to make about sort of as we were working our way through the implementation. And then towards the end, we were very clear about tailoring the materials, the training materials, the communication materials, the quick reference guides, etc. They were really tailored to them, but they were also tailored to the contractors themselves and to the agencies. And I think that's the bit that I felt where Beeline and Hudson RPO added to us, because I would have focused internally. But it was really important to make sure that we engaged with the contractors and the agencies. So we used multiple forms, every form of communication that we could find, but we had a fairly consistent email approach. We had a kind of a consistent banner. People knew when it was going to come. People knew what to expect. So that degree of consistency around the branding, I think, was helpful for the project.
Yeah. I mean, people forget that you can actually use marketing inside your organisation. It's very powerful, and I think a key to success for a lot of these implementations. Now, we all know in a perfect world there wouldn't have been any obstacles or any problems, Jenny, but I imagine there probably were a couple of challenges along the way. Do you want to share any of those with us, and also the learnings? How did you and the team overcome the problems?
Thank you. I think one of the earliest things I'll just say is, as you said at the beginning, Tanya, we did this project during the early stages of COVID. So firstly, the entire project team, everybody involved, was working remotely, and has never to this day ever physically all connected or met. And that's probably a norm for some people, but it was a kind of an unusual situation for all of us to wrap our heads around. Carol's mentioned it a couple of times in her conversation. We took a while to get clarity around our business processes so that they could be translated into the new systems. So, there was lots of people involved in that, and I probably, underestimated the number of people inside Tabcorp that had their fingers on systems and policies that I needed to bring together. Yes, so there was lots that I was kind of having to pull in at the last minute, going, okay, you actually need to be in these. You're a key part. So knowing who those people were, and you may or may not be able to always get that right up front, but the more you can, the better off. Technical integrations are always fun, and we had our share of those with our Oracle ERP system. But look, they're just a matter of working your way through them and just plodding through and getting the data correct. I think our problem internally is the information that Beeline required was coming from multiple systems and multiple data points inside Tabcorp, some of it on a spreadsheet, some of it in people's heads, and some of it from an ERP. So trying to massage all of that data and dare I say, sometimes multiple times for testing became a...
Oh, Jenny might have frozen there for a second, or maybe it's all the multiple data sources catching up with us. But I think this is really spelling out one of the major benefits of doing one of these programs is that you actually pull all this together and actually identify who are the stakeholders in your organisation and what processes are they doing. So in some cases, even before you implement something, you've already miles ahead. But I imagine, Carol and Kimberly, that you had a lot going on your side while Jenny was working inside the organisation. So, Carol, do you want to share with us how you helped with the, managing some of these obstacles?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that really helped all three parties was that we had effective, transparent and collaborative governance in place. We all the team really worked very, very collaboratively. We were able to be very honest and very frank with each other about, how we were going to manage some of the parts of the process and the project that we didn't know was missing at the start, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think, the whole team worked really collaboratively with all the stakeholders, from finance, from HR, from the internal IT programs. What was really wonderful was we, as Jenny has said, had a major ERP outage. But there was never any blame game. It was just, okay, here's the situation, here's the reality. How do we work together to solve it? And that what we did was we looked really pragmatically at what we could reprioritize in the project plan and which parts of the data we could use it by either using the old sort of stale data or putting together some dummy data so that we could continue with the project, so we could continue keeping the project on timeline. And Hudson RPO were really, really amazing in terms of, reaching out to the internal hiring managers, reaching out to different stakeholders in order to check that, the data that we were dummying, that we were assuming would be correct, was in fact correct. So that was really, priceless, to be honest. And I think, at the end of the day, everybody just had that real can-do, make it happen attitude. And at the end of the day, that's what we did.
Fantastic. What about from your side, Kimberly? How are these challenges managed?
Yeah, look, I think it was a really successful implementation, although, quite complex and made more complex by being 100% remote. Although there were three teams, they really worked as one team. And the way that we organised the work is to kind of have some core streams where we had owners from Beeline, Tabcorp and Hudson RPO. So, just to give some examples of some of those streams, there was a contract stream. That was a large piece of work because we had to, renegotiate contracts with not just, all of the agency panel, but also our own contracts and contracts with Beeline. There was a process mapping stream of work, the data collection and validation stream. A really big part of the project was the transition of the existing contractors from other agencies across to Hudson RPO payroll. So that was quite a big piece of work. And then things like recruiting the MSP team, inducting them and training them. Obviously the configuration and implementation of the VMS, Beeline, invoicing and payment and reporting. So we had really strong project managers from each organisation. They worked as one. As I said before, the 5 C's around communication, clarity of case for change. So it felt like everybody knew why we were doing it. Everybody knew what the timeframes were. And yes, they probably got expanded a little bit because of COVID. Normally we would sit in a room together and kind of hash some of these things out in all-day sessions, and we didn't have that luxury over Zoom. So probably took a little longer than normal, but I think the proof is in the pudding in terms of the results that we're now seeing for Tabcorp, which we are really delighted with.
Yep. Look, you both may have answered this because I was trying to think, ask you what the challenges were. And to your point, Kimberly, we need to celebrate. So my next question was going to be, well, what worked well? Is there anything that you haven't touched on that you think you'd like to highlight now? I'll start with you, Kimberly, if you want to keep going.
Okay. I think the amount of discretionary effort that all three teams put in, I mean, they really went above and beyond. I mean, this is not an insignificant undertaking. So I know there were some late nights and weekends and things like that, but everybody was just really committed to the goal, which was really nice to see. I'm probably the most pleased about the collaboration between the three businesses.
Yeah, sounds like it was
Yeah.
What about you, Carol? What did you think worked well?
I think, one of the things that worked beautifully was that Tabcorp were really understanding in terms of, the way that they came to the table. So, for example, because we couldn't get the data and we couldn't link to the ERP through integrations, Jenny and her team pragmatically looked at that scenario and said, right, well, let's stand up Beeline VMS as a standalone product, and we'll integrate it once we get our ERP back online. So instead of, really drawing out the project and losing some of the gains that we've made, Jenny and her team were super pragmatic and went, if this thing stands up, because we've got Hudson RPO on site with us, we can have this be a standalone system until such times as we actually can integrate with the ERP. So I think that was a real, standout for me, and it showed, how great and pragmatic and really business oriented the Tabcorp team were.
A lovely compliment to you and your team, Jenny. So look, we've just gone through the implementation, the challenges, the highlights. Let's now talk about the now. What have been the successful outcomes since implementation? What's working well? Are there any learnings? So why don't we start with you, Jenny? What's been the biggest wins for you so far?
Well, look, I'm actually going to start with the integration of the team into Tabcorp culture, because that has been, I don't know, probably unexpectedly a great win for us. We expected a service, a quality service, but I think I was not quite expecting the cultural integration, which has really helped ensure that our contractors feel the same, feel as attached to Tabcorp as our employees do, and that's just been a wonderful sort of outcome that I don't think we should overlook. The systems are robust. They are, the integrations are working despite our little hiccup right at the beginning. We have not had a hiccup in our systems. The reporting is fantastic. It's consistent. It's accurate. It's just what our business wants. And the financial outcomes, have been achieved. You stated that in the opening, so quite frankly, at the moment, it's probably got to be one of the most well accepted, endorsed, understood and pleasing project results from a Tabcorp perspective. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say it just because I'm on the webinar. It really is, has been a truly great outfit. And I'm sorry I lost you all for a minute, but can I just please say the cooperation between everybody on this call was critical for the success. It's still critical for the continued outcomes.
Oh, it sounds like the dream team. I wished I was on this team, I tell you. So, Kimberly, what's been the biggest wins for you so far? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think some similar themes to what Jenny just outlined. I mean, I'm glad we delivered what we promised. That's really important for me and my team, that when we say we can deliver these benefits, that they are actually delivered. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing was Tabcorp made our team feel really welcome. It wasn't a them and us. It was we're just an extension of the HR team. So my team feel really engaged and very lucky to be part of that Tabcorp business. And then thirdly, we have been getting really good feedback, and sometimes I'm copied on some of the feedback from hiring managers who say, wow, that was just so simple, or from a contractor who says, wow, I just got the best service, or even from some of the agency panel who feel like the whole process has been more tightly managed now. So, I think there's benefits for everyone, really. But I think that one of the things that we bring to the table is not just the management of that agency panel, but actually the direct sourcing of those contingent workers. So the team that we've embedded on site are not just administering the process, they are sourcing and pipelining these contractors. And we all know that the contingent population is growing at a faster rate actually in the market than permanent roles at the moment, and will continue to do so. So it's a strategically critical kind of function that we're providing there. And I think that, we work closely with their permanent hiring team as well, sharing talent between the two of us, which is another nice benefit.
Absolutely. Well, they're saying that the contingent workforce is set to grow to over 50% of the total workforce by 2023, I think, which is insane. And of course, we're facing huge talent shortages at the moment globally. So that idea of being easy to work with helps you become a customer of choice for some of these talent suppliers. So, the systems you have, the processes you have can make a huge difference. Carol, from your perspective, what have been the biggest wins?
Now that the program is embedded, it's running, it's in steady state, I think that we delivered, as Kimberly said, what we said we would, that it was relatively seamless. It's been adopted really well by the hiring managers, to the point that we can now look at introducing our new hiring manager experiences and the new analytics in the tool, because it doesn't feel like change overload. It just feels like an extension of what's already there. So I think that's, from a technology perspective, that's a really big win.
Fantastic. Kimberly, do you feel like we've covered all the successes of the program? When, now that we look back and we've talked about the biggest wins, do you think we've really covered all the successes?
Yeah, maybe just one more that we maybe haven't discussed, or we just maybe touched on, is just the workforce agility that a MSP program can provide. So, we all know during COVID that, some of us were required to scale down our workforces. And I think, having and sometimes that's really hard and expensive to do when there's a permanent workforce, and not great for your brand either. So having that agility through your contingent workforce, I just think that's another, strategic benefit that is often underplayed when we list all of the other benefits, because there are really tactical benefits in terms of cost and visibility that we've discussed. But more strategically, I think, some of the benefits around workforce agility and also brand, because you want your employment brand to resonate not just with your permanent hires, but increasingly with your contingent workforce, and also some of the strategies that you're deploying in your perm workforce, such as, diversity objectives, also equally can apply. So again, my team are quite, keen to partner with Tabcorp to look at how we can play those diversity hiring practices in the contingent workforce as well.
Fantastic. Someone there strongly agrees with you. One of our canine panelists fully endorses that last point.
Excellent.
Jenny, we're all about celebrating successes today. Do you feel that we've covered all the successes? Because I want to move on to the future next, but I just want to make sure that you're celebrating this big success you've had.
I think that the one thing I would add has been the advantage that Hudson RPO brought to the table was around the professionalism of managing the contingent workforce. And I think when you're sitting here internally thinking about whether you outsource, dare I say, you know, for any sort of activity, sometimes us people in people culture think we can do everything, and you know, nobody can do it better than us, you know, because it's our brand, it's our culture, and how do you sort of, you know, replicate that? But we've been disproven, and so I would just say it's a learning for us. There are specialists; they bring really good specialist skills. Kimberly talked a lot about brand management. That is really critical. You talked, Tanya, about the numbers of people in the contingent workforce proportionately moving forward. So as a P&C operative, I would be recommending to people to really think about it from that perspective.
Oh, fantastic. Carol, have we left any stone unturned here with our successes?
The only thing that I would probably add to what Kimberly and Jenny have said, and it's sort of the same, you know, you look at all the independent analysts and they tell us that, you know, your contingent workforce will grow, particularly over the next few years, you know, with the limited mobility, etc. And I think that remembering that your vendor management system can also capture your statement of workers so that you've got a really full view of your talent, and the analytics that sit in it and the reporting that Jenny touched on allow you to really make data-driven critical business decisions about where you spend your dollar and about how you bring your talent in, you know, especially when you're looking at independent analyst research telling you that there is a whole section now of professionals who are preferring to work in a contract capacity, you know, as opposed to a permanent solution.
Thank you. I love all these successes. I feel like we have celebrated. So thank you, panel, for sharing that. As we all know, if you've ever implemented a program, once you've implemented it, it's only the beginning. You get things up and running well, and you're in phase one. You start to collect some of the savings and benefits, but then the pressure's on to deliver more and more for your businesses. So I guess, Jenny, is one of my final sort of questions. What do you think is next for the program at Tabcorp?
Well, Carol just alluded to it. I think we've had a number of conversations about encompassing our vendor resource population as well, that we would call that, and not just our contractors. So I think that still hasn't quite hit the top of our priority list yet, but that's still one for discussion. It's open. It's an open conversation that we need to have, and at the moment, probably very specific to Tabcorp and the way we are, we've got to work out how do we set this up across two organisations now moving forward, because we will be demerging next year. So that's probably but functionally, I think it would be the inclusion of the vendor resource community for us, so that we've got everybody covered.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like exciting times. It sounds like you're actually going to do at least another one or maybe two rollouts there, Jenny, with the demerger. There's never a dull moment, is there?
No.
Now, look, why don't we move on to some Q&A? Now, Carol and Kimberly, I actually can't see if we've got any questions from our audience. Is there any there that we'd like to share? I know I had one myself. You'd think that I would have asked enough questions by now, but well, please feel free to do so. Carol, is there one there?
Yeah. There's one here about implementation. Did you use a big bang approach or a staggered deployment? If staggered, which criteria were used to decide which area of the business would go first and last?
Oh, well, who should take that? Is that Jenny?
Look, I think probably logically, in answer to that, we would probably say big bang. However, as we worked our way through the organisation, there were pockets of groups of people that kind of fitted or didn't fit. So we did have to work through our organisation and capture every sort of contingent worker situation. But once we determined what fitted, then we went all out at the same time at Christmas with a tech.
Oh, what a team. Kimberly, do we have any more there, or can I shoot with mine?
Yeah, go for it, Tanya.
Well, I mean, I don't know why I didn't ask you this, but, time and investment required. So, Jenny, how much of an investment was it from Tabcorp in terms of time and input during the implementation period, and how long did it take?
Gosh, that's a bit caught me off guard. I'm trying to remember. Like, I know when we finished, because I feel like we've kind of got it. Did feel like we started about sort of March, April, so it's probably about 9 months in duration, ladies. Was that about right?
Yeah, so the actual technical implementation of the program was probably about 17 weeks, but we did do some really robust pre-work in terms of readiness. Hudson RPO did some really fantastic work in terms of gathering requirements and gathering data, so that when we actually got into the immersion sessions or the discovery sessions, some conversations had already been had. So if you look at the whole woe to go, probably about 9 months, but that includes some kind of pre-work and a hypercare period. So whenever we do a solution implementation, we also make sure that we include on the end a hypercare period, so that we've got our SMEs on standby. Not that anything goes wrong, but just in case.
I will say, Tanya, that was well adhered to, and that we were basically on time. So apart from Tabcorp stubbing its own toe, everybody else, was on time. Yeah.
It's almost like a dream sequence. I'm not used to hearing these sort of comments about tech implementations.
Yeah.
Another question is really, and, we are all slowly moving back into the office, but of course, a lot of people are going to choose to stay at home, and it's this whole onboarding question for you all. We've got a remote team with a new client. So, maybe Kimberly, you're the best to answer this one. How did you find setting up an in-house team from Hudson RPO at Tabcorp in this remote environment? Because, if you've got some tips, I think everyone could use those right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, we literally overnight had to take our entire workforce and make them remote. So we relied heavily on technology to do that. And, thankfully it was quite a seamless process, not just for Tabcorp, but for our other clients. So, most of our recruiters and sources and admins are still kind of working at home for the majority of their time. They are utilising Zoom and Teams to have face-to-face contact as much as possible with their hiring communities, and using other video interviewing and other tech tools to kind of assess the candidates. We've seen a lot more adoption of kind of virtual onboarding tools. We're adopting Emborder ourselves as an onboarding tool, and that really, I think, helps to personalise the onboarding experience for new hires. So I think, you just have to pay a little bit of extra attention to doing what you would normally do face-to-face, online. And I think our workforce has really responded positively to it. I think, working at home and a little bit on the client site seems to work well for everyone. So we haven't really seen any major hurdles. And I think our productivity has not dropped at all. If anything, our productivity has increased during COVID, so that's great. Candidate service levels haven't dropped. So, but I do think you need a strong leader who understands how to engage their people in a different way, you know, and really know how to reach through Zoom and connect at a personal level to understand how that individual is coping, what they need in terms of training or support. So I think, you know, we will see a lot more training for leaders on, you know, how to manage hybrid teams and how to engage remotely. And, you know, we're seeing people hire people all over Australia and all over APAC now, not just in traditional roles. So that isn't going away anytime soon. In fact,
no.
We did some training with our managers on how to engage with your teams remotely, and you know, it's still something that we're focused on and passionate about.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. When you perfect that training, I know a lot of people in our community would love that, Kimberly. So please shout out and let me know, because, it's going to be a constant. So fantastic. Well, look, that really winds up our conversation for today. But I wanted to give the three of you the opportunity for any closing thoughts. I mean, Carol, is there anything we haven't covered today, or any final thoughts from you?
Just, I'm actually exceptionally proud to have been part of this team. As I say, I was a project sponsor from a Beeline perspective, and you know, you're jokingly saying the dream team, but it really was an almost perfect implementation. Not that things went perfectly. Team worked together collaboratively perfectly. I'm really proud to have been part of this, and I'm dreadfully sorry. I've got a new puppy, and my old dog just keeps barking. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it wouldn't be COVID without a puppy or a child or something happening. Exactly. Oh no, I think it adds a really nice element. We've actually got a dog in the office here today, and it just makes everyone so happy. So we'll save the star of the show, Jenny, to last. Kimberly, any final thoughts before we wrap up today's conversation?
No, just thanks and appreciation to Jenny and to Beeline. We've really enjoyed the partnership and continue to do so.
Now, I've put you under a lot of pressure here, Jenny, calling you the star of the show and giving you the final word. Any closing thoughts?
Look, it was a really great project. It delivered on the business case. It continues to deliver on the business case, but it wouldn't have got there without the intent and the collaboration of everybody. We've said that numerous times, but it was key. So thank you to everybody involved. And I know Jade's chatting away on the chat, so I know she's there. So if Kerry Ann's not there, thank you also.
Oh, how wonderful. You know, I've just flown in today and I feel like I'm part of the team, so I'm feeling like I've had a great success, and I've only spent an hour on this project. So look, I'm sure you'll all agree Tabcorp, Hudson RPO and Beeline have made a formidable force, showing that in the face of adversity, it's all about who's on your team and ensuring you put it all together in the same direction. I'm sure if you'd like more information about MSP or VMS, then please get in touch with one of our panelists from today. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.